Welcome to the Robots vs. Vampires podcast. This is the show where each week we take a deep dive into some amazing stories of sci-fi and fantasy, good versus evil, those unexpected battles, and try and figure out what's real and what's fiction. Rate and follow the show for more awesome stories. This week is no exception. You guys send us some really interesting stuff, and we're going to be tackling two stories today where ordinary folks find out they have some pretty extraordinary abilities and face some truly daunting challenges. Our mission today: well, we're going to unpack those core insights and those oh-so-juicy twists and turns that these imaginative worlds throw at us. We want to give you that express lane to understanding what makes these stories tick.
Yeah, absolutely. And these selections really get to the heart of that timeless struggle between good and evil, but with some really creative new twists, I have to say.
You got that right. So first up, we're journeying into a fairy tale, but with a twist. You can forget the damsel in distress trope. In this version, Sleeping Beauty wakes up to way more than just a handsome prince waiting for her. We're talking about Aurora discovering a hidden magical heritage and then having to face off against Maleficent, who, let me tell you, has been busy upgrading her magical powers. Big time. We'll be exploring how this new take turns the classic story on its head and what it says about finding your own strength and those unexpected turns life can take.
Yeah, it's super interesting how the source material flips the script on those traditional fairy tale expectations right from the get-go. We see the main character taking charge right away, which immediately changes the whole feel of the story.
It does. It does. Then we're going to switch gears and dive into a contemporary story about a teenager dealing with a secret. And let's just say his full moons are a little wilder than most. Your source introduces us to Ethan, and yeah, he turns into a wolf, literally. We're going to look at how he struggles with his double life and how he has to learn to embrace his inner beast to protect his town from a threat that's definitely not just some wild animal. Get ready for a story of self-discovery, loyalty, and facing the darkness that lurks both inside and out.
I think that contrast, the everyday struggles of being a teenager, combined with this totally wild transformation, it just makes for a really engaging story. It makes the fantastical feel so relatable.
Well, for sure. All right, let's jump right in. First story, Dawn of the Briar Queen. Anyone who thinks they know Sleeping Beauty, well, get ready for a surprise. Princess Aurora wakes up after 100 years, not to a fairy tale ending, but to a kingdom that's changed. A Maleficent who's still hanging around and even more powerful than before. And get this, she finds out she has dormant magical powers of her own. Talk about a wake-up call. The story's not about being rescued anymore. It's about Aurora fighting for her kingdom. It's about survival.
It really is a total shift for Aurora, In this version, she's not waiting around to be rescued. She's the one shaping her destiny and the fate of her kingdom.
And even her awakening is different. It's not that perfect romantic kiss breaking the curse. The source actually says she wakes up with birds nesting in her hair. It's a little funny, a little disorienting. What do you think about that opening?
Well, I think it throws you off right away. You expect the classic romantic awakening, and instead you get something that's almost comical. It tells you right away that this isn't the typical fairy tale. Aurora's experience, her point of view, is what matters here, not the traditional tropes.
I like that. And then there's the prince. Bless his heart. He shows up, ready to be the hero, all dramatic, kneeling there and telling her beauty broke the curse. And Aurora's blinking, totally confused. She's like, who are you? And get these birds out of my hair. It's so funny. It shows you right away that he's not the only hero in this story. The power dynamic is completely flipped.
Exactly. He comes in expecting to play the classic hero role and is just completely undercut. It forces you to see Aurora differently. This is not a princess who needs saving. This is a woman who's been thrown into a brand new world and has to figure things out on her own.
Okay, so here's where it gets really interesting. Instead of, waltzing off into the sunset with Prince Charming, Aurora ends up in the castle library, drawn to these old, dusty spellbooks. Now, this isn't your typical princess reading material. The source describes it as her touching these books, the words start pulsing, and she feels this strange energy in her own blood. It's like this deep connection to magic, something you wouldn't expect from Sleeping Beauty, right? Mm-hmm. What does this tell us about Aurora?
It adds this whole new layer to her,
Yeah.
The fact that she has these magical abilities suggests maybe her sleep, the curse, it wasn't just something that happened to her. Maybe it was somehow connected to this power inside her. Maybe it even triggered it. It changes her from a passive character to someone with hidden potential just waiting to be unleashed.
And just as she's starting to figure this out, wham! Maleficent makes a grand entrance. The castle shakes, thorns shoot up from the ground, and there she is in the courtyard. And she is not happy that Aurora is awake. The whole scene screams, "I'm back, and I'm here to destroy your kingdom." Like, classic villain move.
Totally. You know, it's typical for villains to be persistent, but the source makes it clear Maleficent is especially ticked off about Aurora waking up. It's like Aurora's return directly threatens her plans, the power structure she's built up over the past 100 years.
But this is where we see how different Aurora is. When Maleficent attacks with her thorn magic, Aurora doesn't just hide, she fights back. Her own magic just erupts, and vines burst from the ground, not to trap Maleficent, but to shield Aurora.
Yeah.
And it's in this moment that she realizes the thorns weren't just some random curse. They were a twisted version of her own power. Huge turning point in this story. What is this mirroring of the thorns and her magic, what does it mean?
It changes the entire meaning of the curse. Aurora is not just someone who had this magic done to her. She has magic within her. And it suggests that maybe Maleficent wasn't creating something new with the curse, but twisting, corrupting something that was already there. It hints at a deeper connection between them. Maybe even that their powers are somehow linked.
And then, just like in a classic fairy tale, a raven lands on her shoulder. Talk about perfect timing. It whispers about a group of resistance fighters in hiding, ready to fight back. This isn't about waiting for a prince to save the day anymore. Aurora decides, let's get to work. A queen has a battle to win. She doesn't hesitate. How does this change her role?
It's a complete transformation. From passive victim to active leader. She's not just accepting what's happening to her anymore, she's taking charge, choosing to fight for her kingdom. She's embracing her power and her responsibility as their queen.
Yeah. And forget about those fairy tale romances. The source describes what she's feeling as wild, chaotic, a surge of power. It's intense. And the prince, well, he's now trying to keep up. Talk about a role reversal.
It really shows how much she's changed. The contrast between the romantic ideal and the raw power she's experiencing, it just highlights her transformation. This isn't the destiny she thought she was going to have. This is something she's creating herself through her own strength. And the prince, well, he's showing us that heroism comes in many forms.
So the battle against Maleficent. Yeah, it's not easy. Maleficent's magic is powerful. It's fueled by her bitterness. But Aurora's magic is different. It's life-giving. The source describes vines tangling with thorns, blasts of dark energy met by explosions of blooming flowers and plants. What is this contrast in their magic? What does that tell us?
I think it symbolizes the battle between destruction and creation, driven by their emotions. Maleficent's magic comes from a place of anger and resentment it wants to destroy. But Aurora's power is connected to life and growth. It represents her desire to heal her kingdom, not just protect it.
And just when you think you know what's going to happen next, things escalate. Suddenly, the air feels different. Maleficent screams, and the shadows start swirling towards this rip in the air. And then a clawed hand reaches through. This is way more than just a fight between a queen and a sorceress. What's happening here?
Yeah, it takes the whole story to another level. Suddenly, there's this huge unknown threat. It's like there's an ancient evil lurking out there, something that even Maleficent is afraid of. The story isn't just about a personal feud anymore. Now it's about facing something darker, something that threatens everyone.
And even though this new threat is terrifying, Aurora doesn't back down. Her power is surging through her. She's ready to fight. This princess has found her inner strength and a whole lot of magical power to go with it.
She's come a long way from that sleeping princess. She's not going to run away. She's embracing her role as protector, drawing strength from her kingdom and her magic.
What I love is how the whole kingdom rallies behind her. It's not just the prince being brave. Ravens are attacking. Villagers are showing up with lanterns, this little light in the darkness. And Aurora's magic, it's even turning into roses, their scent mixing with the hope of the villagers. It's amazing. It's a united front. What does this collective response tell us?
It shows that heroism isn't just about having magical powers or being royalty. It's about standing together, a community coming together to face danger. And Aurora, she's the symbol of that unity, the one who inspires them. The roses, they represent that hope blossoming right alongside her power.
So the Dawn of the Briar Queen doesn't end like a typical fairy tale. It's not a neat little ending, it's a beginning. Aurora isn't that helpless princess anymore. She's the Briar Queen, stepping into her power, writing her own story.
It's a great reimagining of the classic story. It leaves you feeling excited, wondering what's going to happen next, what challenges she'll face as she embraces her new role, and this larger threat that's emerged.
So we've seen how a familiar fairy tale can be totally transformed by focusing on a character's journey of self-discovery. The next story you sent us, it dives into a more modern struggle with a hidden identity. It's got a bit more of a furry twist. Let's dig into our second story, Wolf Boy Blues. This story introduces us to Ethan, a teenage guy with a secret that's, well, a little hairy. Every full moon, he turns into a wolf. And to make things even more complicated, there's a dark force threatening his town, forcing him to confront his wild side head-on.
Yeah, it's a classic story about duality, the struggle between two sides of yourself, set against the backdrop of being a teenager, which is hard enough, right? And then, to top it all off, there's this supernatural twist that pushes Ethan to face his inner demons, and some very real outer ones, too.
Definitely. And the source really highlights how much Ethan hates this transformation.
Yeah.
He's not some cool werewolf, He's in pain, he can't control his instincts, and the fur, it's everywhere. He already feels like an outsider, describes himself as normally weird, and this wolf thing just amplifies all of that. What do you think his struggle tells us about him?
It shows just how scary and confusing it can be when your life changes in such a huge way, especially as a teenager when you're already figuring out who you are. He wants to be normal, but then there's this part of him that's totally out of his control. It's a lot for anyone to handle.
Totally. And early on, we see these signs that something's wrong, even when he's not a wolf. The nightmares, he blacks out sometimes, and then there's the incident with the half-eaten squirrel he finds. It's not pretty. These moments show how little control he has and how guilty he feels about it. How do these early clues set the stage for the story?
It builds suspense. You get a sense that something bigger is coming, and that his transformations might be dangerous, not just for him, but for others too. And it deepens that internal conflict he's dealing with. He's struggling to reconcile these two parts of himself.
Meanwhile, there are these strange attacks happening in the town. Everyone thinks it's wild dogs. But the source points out that the attacks are too organized, too strategic for that. It's like there's something more going on than meets the eye, something darker than just animal instinct. Why do you think the story does that? Why not just say it's wild dogs?
It creates this sense of unease, like something's hidden beneath the surface of this normal town. And it sets up a mystery for Ethan to solve. He's got this unique perspective, being a wolf himself. Maybe he can figure out what's really going on.
Then enters Sarah. She's the new girl in town. And she's not your typical teenager. She's observant, interested in the supernatural. Not in a crazy way, but in a quiet, thoughtful way. The source says she can see beyond the surface, which is a big deal in a story like this. What role do you think Sarah plays in Ethan's journey?
She's the one who sees Ethan for who he really is, I think she's a potential ally, someone who might understand and even accept his secret. She's open-minded and she's good at observing things, which makes her a key player in uncovering the truth.
And she's the one who starts to crack the case. Sarah figures out there's a pattern to the attacks, that they're not random acts of violence, they're protective, which echoes Ethan's own conflicted feelings about his wolf side. Why is Sarah's discovery so important?
Because it changes everything. Up until then, everyone thought these attacks were just random, senseless acts. But now we see there's a purpose, a reason behind them. It suggests that something else is going on, something that might explain why Ethan is transforming into a wolf.
With the full moon approaching, Ethan's feeling the pressure. He can sense this dark presence in the town, and it's different from his wolf instincts. It's not good. He knows he has to warn Sarah, even though it means risking his secret. Why do you think he does that? Why risk everything?
It shows he's not just thinking about himself anymore. He's starting to feel responsible for others. Even though he's scared and wants to hide, his concern for Sarah overrides his fear. It's a huge step for him.
And then comes the transformation. It's brutal. The source compares it to being hit by a truck. But with the pain comes his heightened awareness. All his senses are amplified, smells are stronger, his hearing is sharper. He sees his town in a completely different way. Even Sarah's scent, it's this mix of fear and strength. How does all of this change the way he sees his surroundings?
It's like he's seeing the world for the first time, His senses are so intense, he's picking up on details he never noticed before. And it makes him hyper-aware of the dangers around him. He's forced to become a protector, even if he doesn't want to be.
He tracks Sarah's scent to this creepy old mill, and there she is, face to face with this cloaked figure with these glowing red eyes. And it's clear this isn't just any wolf. This is something else, something bad. What does the description of this creature tell us?
It's like straight out of nightmare fuel. Those glowing red eyes, the cloak, it screams supernatural. It's definitely not a normal animal. It's intelligent, it's probably magical, and it's definitely not here to make friends.
It's a real jerk, too. It taunts Sarah, calls Ethan that mangy pup, and reveals that it's been behind the attacks, that it wants to use Ethan's wolf form for its own evil purposes. Why do you think it wants to control Ethan?
It shows that this creature is a mastermind. All the attacks, they were planned. And it wants to use Ethan's power, his connection to the town, to achieve some dark goal. Whatever it is, it can't be good.
And that's when Wolf Ethan jumps in, purely on instinct to protect Sarah. The fight is wild, all teeth and claws and snarls. The moonlight catches these weird symbols carved into the mill. The creature's powerful, and it keeps trying to mess with Ethan's mind using its magic. Can Ethan's wolf form beat this thing?
The fight scene is intense. It really captures how primal Ethan's wolf side is. But at the same time, you see how outmatched he is by the creature's magical powers. He can fight back, but it's clear he's going to need more than just brute strength to win.
At one point, Ethan manages to rip the creature's cloak, and we see its face. It's not an animal, it's twisted, deformed. The source calls it a perversion of nature. It's a chilling confirmation that they're up against something truly evil. Why is this reveal so important?
Because it shows just how messed up this thing is. This isn't a regular werewolf story, This creature represents a corruption of the natural order, a force of chaos and destruction. It makes the threat even more real and more terrifying.
Just when it seems like all is lost, Sarah steps up. She's amazing. She spots these huge rusty gears in the mill and tells Ethan to jam them. It's her sharp eye for details that gives them a chance. How does Sarah's intelligence, her human side, become a weapon against this supernatural being?
It's a great reminder that human intellect is still a powerful tool. You don't always need magic or brute force to win a fight. Sometimes you just need to be observant, think strategically, and find the right weak spot.
And it's in this moment, fueled by his desire to protect Sarah, that Ethan's transformation changes. It's not just a curse anymore, it's a choice. He can control his wolf powers now, use them with purpose. Why is this shift so important for him?
It shows that he's not just a slave to his wolf side, He's starting to integrate both parts of himself, combining his human will with the wolf strength. It's a huge step towards self-acceptance and mastering his abilities.
So he goes after those gears, using his fangs and claws to jam them up, creating this massive distraction.
Yeah.
He's using his wolf form strategically.
Exactly. It's not just instinct anymore, it's calculated. He's not just reacting, he's thinking, planning. It shows how much he's growing, learning to use his abilities to his advantage.
And then they both fall into the river, bathed in the moonlight. The creature is furious, but for Ethan, there's this strange peace. He's connected to nature, the water, the earth, the moon. It strengthens him. He's not just a wolf, he's part of this world. How does this connection to nature help him?
It gives him a sense of belonging, Like his wolf side isn't something separate, it's connected to the world around him. And it grounds him, reminds him that there's more to him than just the monster he thinks he is.
He finally manages to push the creature into the current, and it disappears with a final scream. Ethan transforms back, he's exhausted, but they've survived.
It's a victory, even though there are still unanswered questions, right? They don't know what the creature was or where it went. But for now, they're safe. It shows the power of working together and Ethan's growing ability to protect himself and others.
And then something really beautiful happens. Sarah sees him in all his post-wolf glory. And she doesn't freak out. She's worried about him, that's all. And that seems to mean everything to Ethan. Why do you think her acceptance is so important for him?
Because it shows him that he doesn't have to be alone, She accepts him, wolf and all, and that's huge for his self-esteem. It gives him hope that maybe he can live with this. Maybe he can even find a way to use it for good.
The story doesn't give us all the answers. We still don't know exactly what the creature was. And Ethan's still figuring things out. He's scared, but he's also thinking about maybe using his wolf side to protect the town. That's like he's at a crossroads.
Yeah, it's not a neat and tidy ending. It's more realistic that way,
Yeah.
Ethan's journey isn't over. He's been changed by this experience, and now he has to decide who he wants to be.
The story ends with him standing in the moonlight, holding Sarah's hand. It's uncertain, but it's also hopeful. It suggests he might be able to accept who he is, both wolf and human, and find a way to use his powers for good.
Yeah, that image of them standing together, it's powerful. It shows that he's not alone, and that even though his future is uncertain, there's hope. He has someone he can trust, someone who accepts him, and that makes all the difference.
What's interesting is that both of these stories, even though they're totally different, have this common thread running through them. It's about discovering your inner strength when you least expect it, and having the courage to face threats you never could have imagined. With Aurora, we saw a classic fairy tale flipped on its head. She found out that true power can lie dormant until the right moment, until you absolutely need it. And Ethan's story. It's about how facing your fears, embracing the things that scare you, can lead to finding your purpose, maybe even becoming a hero.
What I find fascinating is how both of them have to redefine who they thought they were. Aurora, the sleeping princess, becomes this powerful queen, wielding magic to protect her kingdom. And Ethan, he learns to harness his wild side, the part of him he was so afraid of, and use it to help others. It shows that we're not stuck in one role, you know? We can change, we can evolve, and we can surprise ourselves with what we're capable of.
It really makes you think, doesn't it?
Yeah.
What kind of hidden potential do we all have inside us? And what situations might make us tap into strengths we never knew we had?
Exactly. It makes you wonder what you're capable of, right? What side of yourself might you have to embrace if the right challenge came along? It's a good reminder that we're often stronger than we think we are.
Definitely something to think about. Thank you all for sharing these awesome stories with us. We hope you enjoyed this deep dive on the Robots vs. Vampires podcast. Join us next week for another epic exploration into the realms of sci-fi and fantasy. Don't forget to rate and follow the show for more awesome stories.